You have entered the Chronic's rabbit hole. And Matt, thank you so much for your Patreon membership request and for bringing a cool video down the rabbit hole. This is Deutschland by Rammstein, and this is an analysis of that amazing video that we did over a year ago. Can you believe it, y'all? Can't wait for this.
I can't believe it's been over a year since we've reacted to Deutschland by Rammstein. I still remember that video. It stuck in us so greatly. I can't wait to get into an analysis.
Matt, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of a description as to why you actually wanted to give us this reaction as well, because that gives us meaning for why we should react to this as well. All right. I know it was already a year ago. How time flies when you reacted to Rammstein, Germany, or Deutschland. Your reaction was great and moving, how you discussed the meaning with each other. I remember we did talk a lot about that one.
We talked a lot about that one.
The video and the reference in it to German history raised some questions. Unfortunately, I only recently found the appropriate video which puts the historical references shown in Rammstein's video into context very well and impressively.
Cool. I'm really excited for this.
I am so excited for this too. This is about 2,000 years. They're going to jam pack into this. Let's see how they do it, y'all.
Matt, I'm so excited to get into the analysis of Deutschland by Rammstein.
Yeah.
I'm also really excited about this one because this is actually done by Three Arrows, not by Rammstein itself. Off camera, we were talking about how Sabaton has done a lot of history things.
Oh yeah.
And they've done their whole channel. So like that's super cool. But this is going to be different because it's an analysis again by someone else. So that's going to be really cool to get into. And I am also really excited for this because not only has it been a year, it was actually January 6, 2023 that we reacted to the original, right? Over 13 months ago since we reacted to Deutschland by Rammstein. And during that reaction, I had even said that in Canada, on our history lesson of world history outside of North America, we only really focus on the 40s when we look at...
We go only back to the 40s?
We go only back to the 1940s when we look at a lot of history from Germany and the rest of Europe. We do like, ancient Sumeria and, things like that, but we don't really look at our recent history much. So I'm super excited to get into 2,000 years of German history in a 30-minute video. This is going to be jam-packed and phenomenal. If you guys are as excited to be here with us for this jam-packed analysis of Deutschland by Rammstein, remember to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe so you never miss a video coming down the rabbit hole.
Matt, thank you so much for bringing this to us. We will make sure to throw up our reaction to this amazing song as well, in case y'all have missed it a year ago. And now we're at the analysis. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Hey, best arrows in the game here. Coming in with some media analysis about a very controversial piece of media that was released by one of Germany's most successful cultural exports a couple of months ago. Of course, I'm talking about the band which single-handedly taught the world the German words "Du hast."
Du hast.
Very true.
In the wake of the band releasing a snippet of their music video for the song Deutschland, or Germany, there has been quite a lot of condemnation hurled in that direction. An Israeli ambassador calling it shameful and demanding immediate removal.
Just for reference.
Former head of Germany's Jewish council said the band was exploiting the suffering and murder of millions for entertainment purposes. And the government's commissioner for anti-Semitism said the band had crossed the red line.
Wait, did they say that about Schindler's List as well?
Yeah, like should any piece of media that references World War II now be
Inglourious Bastards?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
No, you can't. Just because you reference history doesn't mean you're saying something or being in a certain way, like anti-Semitic specifically. You can reference history because it's history. It happened. If you don't reference it and you don't learn about it, then you're doomed to repeat it.
But they are a controversial band. I remember when we asked Chris from Lord of the Lost about that. So here we go.
Imagine.
Despite that,
sorry, I was going to say, imagine you become controversial just because you speak about events that occurred.
That's
the most
obviously that's why people hate the truth.
The government's commissioner for anti-Semitism said the band had crossed the red line. Despite that, the song immediately became a #1 hit, and its music video is close to 80 million clicks on YouTube.
Wow.
So let's talk about it, and maybe we can make sense of it all as we go through the video and decipher
Loving
what's
this.
shown,
Thank
what it
you,
might
Matt.
mean, and at the end, we'll talk about if this reaction is warranted.
Yeah, have
But
your drinks,
please,
y'all.
while you're watching this, keep in mind that everything I say in this video is completely right, uncontroversial, and not up for argument. The video opens showing Roman soldiers walking through
love
a
it.
forest with the title card reading Germania Magna, which was the Roman term for the region in north-central Europe and home of the Germanic tribes. We see the soldiers walking up to a tree which has several bodies hanging from its branches and encountering a black woman cutting off the head of another Roman soldier. At first, I thought this scene was a depiction of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. When the Romans sought to bring the regions that will later become Germany under their control, they suffered a disastrous blow at the hands of Arminius, who was taken from his tribe as a little boy, received Roman military training, but later returned to Germania Magna, uniting previously hostile Germanic tribes against the Romans. Obviously, an immensely important point in German history. There are a bunch of memorials dedicated to Arminius, and this historical moment is often seen as the birth of the German people.
Wow.
Besides the thick forest, another indicator that this scene is referencing this battle are the Roman soldiers hanging from the trees. Because legend has it that after the battle, a Roman was hung from or nailed to every tree in the Teutoburg forest.
No
and while
way.
this battle might be an influence, the year 16 AD doesn't quite fit, so it might also show the campaigns of Germanicus, who sought to bring the region under Rome's control from 14 AD to 16 AD. But since these campaigns also failed, the takeaway pretty much remains the same, namely the uprising of the Germanic people against the Romans. The black woman the Roman soldiers
Do it.
encounter is not supposed to represent a literal person.
I love learning about these, specifically that battle, because I didn't even know about this battle, honestly.
That's like epic.
That's
thinking about
epic. And that is such an amazing story, because even though we didn't know about this battle, we've heard the story of, someone within history who was raised by another place, returning to their people.
Moses.
Right? And so, like, that's such an amazing feat, an amazing battle. And, like, if I was in a school learning about these battles, I would have been
Germanicus.
so intrigued by everything.
No kidding.
And
it
sorry.
just makes you think too of these like crazy, like, because Romans, technically Italy it goes into, and
Yeah.
then Germany becomes their own thing, but then they become Europe and united, and it's like they're. But if you think
Yeah.
about the history of what they went through to think of where they're at 2,000 years in the future and how they're trying to unite and all that, it's crazy.
It's so crazy because, like, there's such an adventure, a journey that has taken place from 16 AD to where we are 2,000 years in the future. And it is intriguing. They nailed everyone to trees.
Yeah, as they should.
No wonder there's always been this kind of, within history, the fear of the Germanic tribes, because they weren't afraid to show, hey, we won this battle.
They went against the Roman Empire.
They went against the Roman Empire.
Like, come on, y'all. They were crucifying people. Of course, they better get put to trees.
Yeah.
Person in the context of the video, but is supposed to serve as the personification of Germany itself.
Yeah, that made sense.
She takes on the role of Germania, which has been the stand-in for Germany for hundreds of years. Some of you might be wondering why Germania, the personification of Germany, is portrayed by a black woman, which are a minority of Germans. Well, trust me when I say it will become clear when we look at the lyrics in a couple of minutes. Our next historical setting is some sort of cellar in which two guys are beating the hell out of one another with brass knuckles. Judging from the clothes and hairstyles, I think it's safe to say this is supposed to be set during the Weimar years. The setting specifically might speak to the large amount of violence in this period, and the whole scene resembles the dance on the volcano image we have of the Weimar years as a period of swing and cultural progress on one side, and social upheaval and violence on the other. Now, violent political clashes weren't unusual even before that period, but in the 1920s it took on a whole new quality. For instance, in 1920, a group of reactionaries executed a successful coup in Germany's capital and seized control of the parliament. And while this coup only lasted 100 hours in total due to a nationwide general strike, it kicked off a chain of violence much more grim than your average political altercation. As a response to this coup, something called the Ruhr Red Army had risen up in West Germany, but after the initial right-wing coup was defeated by the general strike, this army's goal shifted to revolution. What followed was the now reinstated government sending in armed forces to put down this rebellion, with over 2,000 Germans being killed in the process. And not just due to fighting, but mass executions afterwards. This kind of violence is much better described as regional civil wars than just violent clashes between opposing sides. As Mark Jones writes in his book, Founding Weimar, Violence in the German Revolution 1918-1919, at this stage of history, violence was politics and politics was violence.
Jeez.
Any attempt to present the two as separate historical chapters would misjudge the basic character of this epoch.
Yeah.
The violent clashes
Wow.
defining
So we
German...
got to think about that time, because that's like World War One, and then when they lose after that. So you think their politics was violence. Violence was politics for them. They lose this war. They get crippled. And then just to think where they move from that, because always the leader of your country is an embodiment of what is going through
in a social way
in the nation, right?
Yeah.
So this is insane to think where they were even in that time, and I'm loving what this guy's doing here.
Absolutely. And to think that they had so many of these, I love that they said regional civil wars, because we know Germany was split into East Germany and West Germany.
Yeah, later.
And later on. But it's crazy that they had these regional civil wars before the split, which
was the inevitable split,
which ended up becoming the inevitable split.
Yeah.
And that split lasted for so long.
Sure did.
So like this is really interesting to learn for us, because we kind of did the Coles notes of World War One in school, and then did like just
I've been learning a lot more on my own time, because you don't learn it in school.
Everything I've had to learn, I've learned from World War One and previous, I've learned on my own time. And I had never even heard, like I had vaguely heard about these different uprisings that were happening during World War One. Like I knew about them, but this is giving so much more context to it when you aren't given the information.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Germany's interwar period, especially early on, didn't just involve fists or milkshakes. It involved machine guns, it involved artillery, and mass executions. In fact, the first bomb dropped onto Berlin wasn't dropped by the Allies in World War II, but during the Berlin March fights in 1919 by government forces fighting revolutionaries. This scene communicates a level of political violence that would very much shape Germany's way forward. Next up, we have an office with a band being dressed as party...
Just think about that, though, y'all, because, like, we just stormed the White House making a whole fuss. But 100 years before, in Germany, that was going down, which is, like, that's only 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, think about if that happened now, especially in America or something like that. That would just be insane. If that type of upheaval was happening before a world war, like, why are we complaining now?
Higher-ups of the SED regime during East Germany's time as a socialist dictatorship. The lead singer is dressed up as Erich Honecker, in his time General Secretary for the Central Committee of the Socialist Unity Party. Later in the video, we see them partying, popping champagne bottles, and generally acting very unrestrained. And this imagery is quite common in artistic portrayals of East Germany's ruling party. The DDR was, from beginning to end, plagued by a lack of consumer goods, like toilet paper, for instance, which was notoriously scarce, heating material in the winter, drinks in the summer, and so on. Partially this was due to reasons out of the ruling party's influence, like having less trading partners available than their Western counterpart, but also due to sheer incompetence or political decisions like prioritizing heavy industry over the production of consumer goods. In 1958, the party even started a program titled 1,000 Little Things, promising to deliver all the stuff that was lacking, like can openers, razor blades, you know, all those little things. The stated long-term goal of these programs was to raise living standards to a level that would eventually exceed living standards in Western Germany. While this goal specifically was never met, there were ways to get around the problem of lacking consumer goods. One of these ways was to rise through the ranks of the ruling party, which came with a lot of benefits, like a greater variety of food being available to you, or skipping ahead in waiting lists to get a car. Portraying the ruling party of the DDR in this way is often used to show the hypocrisy of a leadership
when you get into like full 100% socialist, then everyone is equity, so you get based on the equity you need, or it is full equality where no matter where you are on a level, you get the exact same thing. This was reverse equity almost, because if you had more, you got more when you go into that leading party. You got to skip the line, you got to have these things because you were working in that higher position.
It was almost like a hybrid, wasn't it? Type of government.
Like a hybrid, like a hierarchy. within itself.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
a socialist hierarchy.
Portraying the ruling party of the DDR in this way is often used to show the hypocrisy of a leadership chastising the West for perpetuating an unjust class system, while at the same time disregarding the notion of equality when it came to themselves.
Yeah.
The members of the band all grew up in East Germany and lived under this regime, so that might explain why they not only included this imagery in their video, but also include this set of lyrics in the song. You have cried a lot, separated in mind, united in heart. Most likely a reference to Germany's forceful separation and the suffering connected to it. Lots of people couldn't see their family members anymore or were murdered attempting to flee the East. In their song Radio from the same album, they are even more explicit in their critique of the DDR, and the song revolves around censorship and escaping a largely closed-off society via the radio, with which you were able to catch signals from the West. And while we're on the topic of East Germany, there's a shot later in the video showing riot police sitting on a tank in front of a giant Karl Marx head. And in case you don't know, this head exists in real life in the city of Chemnitz, formerly known as Karl Marx City. What the tank and the riot police are supposed to reference in combination with this monument is open to interpretation, but one possible event might be the East German Uprising of 1953. As a response to a race in work quotas, which basically means more work for the same salary, construction workers went on a strike not only demanding to drop the quotas, but broad democratization and political freedoms. As more and more workers joined the protests, the government decided to deal with these demands by violently suppressing the uprising, turning to the Soviet Union for military aid. Soviet tanks were deployed, military and police opened fire on protesters, and dozens were killed. Next up we have the band being led through a prison while receiving physical abuse and money raining down from the ceiling. And while the scene takes place in a former DDR prison, the clothes of the inmates and Germania being dressed in what seems like a parade uniform of the Garde Dragoner regiment alludes to the early Weimar years again. Up until 1923, incarceration and the treatment you received in the criminal justice system were supposed to serve deterrence. Under the new social democratic government, this changed and physical abuse as well as confinement in a darkened cell were abolished. The concept of resocialization didn't really seep through to the actual prison guards, and the abuse of inmates continued throughout the Weimar years. 1923 was also the year of the hyperinflation, which might be referenced by all this cash raining down. Inflation was already quite rampant in the German Empire, since you can't really fight a world war with pocket change. But when it really hit the fan was when French and Belgian forces occupied parts of the Ruhr area due to Germany's inability to pay demanded reparations. Naturally, this sudden occupation outraged the German public, and the country's leadership called for passive resistance. Workers in the area went on a general strike and did everything possible to sabotage the efforts of the occupiers. But those workers still had to be paid, which the German government couldn't, so they created even more money out of nothing, which led the inflation to explode. By the end of the year, people had to carry their money in wheelbarrows when going to the store because a single egg, for instance, cost 320 billion Reichsmark. A very scary time, as you can imagine. Here's how the German correspondent of the British Daily Mail described the situation.
I don't even understand how much that is in, say, Canadian dollars, but if that just said billion, what? What even? That doesn't even make sense.
Oh my god.
And to think that's where a lot of countries are at right now. We're just printing money thinking that's going to solve solutions.
Yeah.
But like, oh my god.
That's something like I am paid more today than I've ever been paid in my life. And I can afford less than I could afford when I was 17.
And they're just building this up so much to understand also why Germany's history has this, like, it's not a negative view, but they have a certain aura to them, or what do you say?
It's such a it's a volatile history.
No. They have such a reputation.
Yes.
That is like hard because of what they've actually gone through.
A hardened reputation.
And
absolutely.
This is showing why they went through so much, and then the actual divide, like what Germany has gone through is almost like what the whole United States went through with their Civil War type of a divide, right?
Yeah, back when they created the United States with their Civil War, because we've been watching a lot of Outlander and seeing how people like came in and then how priorities shifted and then that divide happened. And it's interesting how much, I mentioned history repeating itself, but how much history repeats itself in different locations all over the place.
Yeah.
situation, and luckily I could avoid faking a British accent for this quote.
In the shops, the prices are typewritten and posted hourly. For instance, a gramophone at 10 AM was 5 million marks, but at 3 PM it was 12 million marks. A copy of the Daily Mail purchased on the street yesterday cost 35,000 marks, but today it costs 60,000 marks.
It got so bad.
Oh my, that's insane. So, newspaper is literally only in the 35,000, but one egg is in billion.
Yeah.
That if you were to sit down in a cafe and order a coffee, while you were sitting there, the price for that coffee might have gone up from 5,000 to 8,000 marks.
And marks are different,
the impacts
I
of
guess,
this
than
inflation
what
are impossible to list, but naturally, due to many people no longer being able to afford basic necessities, crowds began to riot, loot food stores, and violence again ran rampant. However, the biggest impact of this inflation is one that wasn't immediately visible, because when people lose faith in the economic system, they also lose faith in the political system.
Yes, they do.
Hyperinflation became a trauma whose influence affected the behavior of Germans of all classes long afterwards. It added to the feeling in the more conservative sections of the population of a world turned upside down, first by defeat, then by revolution, and now by economics. It destroyed faith in the neutrality of law as a social regulator between debtors and creditors, rich and poor, and undermined notions of the fairness and equity that the law was supposed to maintain. It debased the language of politics already driven to hyperbolic overemphasis by the events of 1918 to 19. It lent new power to stock fantasy images of evil, not just the criminal and the gambler, but also the speculator, and, fatefully, the financially manipulative Jew.
In addition to that, with this economic
Powerful.
crisis, the novelty of the
I remember in school when we were learning about the different propagandas and how what things were being said all over the place during World War II, especially in Germany, around turning the hate onto the Jews specifically.
Oh yeah, big time.
And that was such a perfect way to say it
To
in
explain.
more than just one thing being attacked.
Why
'Cause
they became a perfect scapegoat.
why they became the perfect scapegoat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
the Weimar system had significantly worn off, and the people who were in favor of this new republic had less and less in their arsenal to argue for preserving it. The next scene we're going to look at is the one that caused the earlier mentioned controversy.
Nice.
We see the band dressed as inmates of a Nazi concentration camp lined up at the gallows awaiting their public execution.
Only
And there are
that
some
scene?
details worked into this scene that are easy to miss. If we take a closer look at the uniforms of the band members, we can see that the bass player of the band is marked as gay, the person next to him as a Jew,
Oh.
and the lead singer wears a combination supposed to identify political prisoners who are also Jewish, so a Jewish socialist, for instance.
Oh.
Judging from the rockets in the background, this scene most likely takes place in the concentration camp Mittelbau-Dora, which is the site where the V2 rocket was built. The V in V2 standing for Vergeltung, or retribution. The weapon in itself wasn't really of any use to the Nazis except for propaganda purposes, and more people actually died during its manufacturing than the rockets killed when reaching their destination. While Rammstein
Wow.
shows this specific image of a public execution clearly set at the V2 manufacturing site is anyone's guess, but it might reference a great injustice connected to this camp specifically.
Yeah.
The manufacturing of the V2 rocket at Mittelbau-Dora happened via a company called Mittelbau GmbH, whose general director was a guy named Georg Rickhey. Obviously, this wasn't an ordinary company, but one that was deeply built around the exploitation of concentration camp inmates, and thus co-responsible for the over 20,000 deaths connected to the manufacturing of the V2 rocket. After the war was over,
20,000?
19 people were put on trial for what happened at this site, one among them, the general director of the Mittelbau GmbH, Georg Rickhey. During the trial, a former inmate testified that he remembered Rickhey to be present at a particularly cruel mass execution of 30 inmates in March 1945. It wasn't simply a mass execution though, but a mass strangulation. Rickhey denied this and also any involvement in implementing the cruel and inhumane work practices at the site, something uncovered documents will later prove to be a lie. He ended up being acquitted without an explanation given and, well, go back to where he was living before the trial, which happened to be the United States. He was one of many German engineers, technicians and scientists brought to the US in something called Operation Paperclip.
Oh
Here
yeah.
you can see former NSDAP and SS
Bill
member
NASA.
Kurt Debus, who became the first director of NASA, sitting between John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson. I'd love to tell you that later in his life, Georg Rickhey faced justice for his involvement in the death of thousands, but sadly nobody knows what happened to him after returning to the US. Probably took on a new identity and, lived his life. Later in the video, the roles are reversed, and we get some cathartic violence with the inmates executing a couple of Nazis via shooting them in the face. Now, before we talk a bit more about this part specifically...
Right.
Before we talk about this part specifically, they were mad because there were Jews being hung, but they weren't mad. They just completely ignored the fact that the Jews then revolted.
It was just that specific scene. It's like, you just watched everything else. Like, they're literally having brass knuckle fights. Like, you're okay with that then? Obviously, like, that, obviously it's not the same thing, but like...
I know that
it was all art. Like, it's just art, y'all.
It's artistic liberty to show what has happened. I mean, you're not going to tell... Without the artistic liberties taken, you're not going to be able to tell 2,000 years of history in a 5-minute song, 10-minute song. Like...
I'm shocked that they had so much controversy, because when we watched it, it was like revolutionary for us, and like we didn't even take any offense, and it was just all making sense of an artistic outlook that they have, and they're so good at it. But I can also see, like, now thinking about it, why, because always there's something
I can
about the
understand
anti-Semitism that people get so...
Absolutely. And I can understand how people who are so hurt who are still hurting by this, because we're not Jewish, we're not German. Yeah. So they're how people who are still who went through these real things could still take offense to this because of the pain that they have.
Yeah, respect.
Specifically, let's look at the last scene where we see the band dressed in 70s clothing clashing with the police and kidnapping our Germania figure. Pretty unambiguously a reference to the RAF, the Red Army faction, which was a left-wing extremist terrorist organization active in West Germany in the 70s. The group understood itself as communist, anti-imperialist city guerrillas and was responsible for the death of over 30 people and also causing one of the biggest crises in modern German history, known as the German Autumn. The period started with the kidnapping of German industrial leader Hans-Martin Schleyer in September 1977, during which 3 police officers and his driver were killed. The goal of the terrorists in this case was to negotiate the release of some already arrested members of the organization, but the German government at the time did not budge and was not willing to agree to an exchange.
Wow.
Tensions increased when about a month later, members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine hijacked a German airplane, making the same demands among other things and threatening to execute all 86 hostages on board the airplane if denied. Quite the turbulent time for this young republic, and needless to say, the political climate got heated up, with left-wing politicians being accused of harboring terrorist sympathies and a general feeling of unsafety among the population. The German Autumn ended when counter-terrorist special forces stormed the captured airplane, freeing all 86 hostages, the earlier mentioned incarcerated members of the RAF killing themselves when hearing of this development, and Hans-Martin Schleyer being executed by his captors.
Wow.
Now, there are a couple of things more one could talk about, like a scene where presumably a witch is burned at the stake with Nazis burning books right next to it. There's a medieval battle scene in which Germania resurrects the fallen knights while a zeppelin passes by, and there's a scene at the end where Germania gives birth to a bunch of Leonbergers, which is a German dog breed. But these are really more open to interpretation than the ones we discussed, so you can comment your own speculation about them.
Which we have!
Before we now try to get at what this video and the song lyrics are supposed to say, we'll have to take a look at the politics of the people starring in it. But for the uninitiated, the question in the back of your mind is probably, is Rammstein a Nazi band? And this accusation is something the band has been feeling the sting of pretty much since its founding. It reached its height when the band used footage from Leni Riefenstahl's Nazi propaganda.
I'm sure Slayer must have went through this too when they did Angel of Death. They had to have.
Propaganda film about the Summer Olympics in 1936 in their music video for the song Stripped. But even if you're unaware of this controversy, there are several things that might make you question their political leanings, like the rolled R or the hyper-clear pronunciation of the lyrics, things often associated with the very specific speech pattern in Adolf Hitler's speeches. There's also the band logo imitating the shape of a Balkenkreuz, often used by the German armed forces. Besides these things, the whole video to Deutschland is dripping with national romanticism, which usually wouldn't cause such a scandal depending on its context, but when combined with imagery from the Third Reich, things get murky.
Very true.
There's the risk of presenting the pretended superiority of the Nazis as rooted in reality, or to make them seem tempting, like with these shots. It looks more like a movie production than a reflection of reality. Or just look at this picture used for the promotion of the song. Now, the band is kind of notorious for not giving many interviews and almost never speaking about their political leanings, but in an interview with the Rolling Stone, they had this to say when asked about the controversy of using footage from a Riefenstahl film. The intensity of the reaction really surprised us.
Yeah.
Back then, we sincerely thought this will find a way of working itself out. We are from the East and grew up as socialists. Back then, we were either punks or goths. We hate Nazis. We come from an entirely different culture. In the past, we fought with these right-wing idiots, and we would do so today. Well, that seems pretty unambiguous. Rammstein says punch Nazis. There you go.
There you go.
After this controversy, Rammstein sought to clean the table in releasing a song called Links 2, 3, 4, or Left 2, 3, 4, with a marching beat and the lyrics, they want my heart on the right side, but when I look down, it is beating left. If we look beyond what is shown in the video to Deutschland and combine it with the actual lyrics, we can clearly see Rammstein's opposition to nationalism and right-wing views shimmering through. Probably the best example is their decision to choose a black actress to portray the personification of Germany. During the Third Reich, German society understood itself as a community defined by its ethnicity as well as a shared past and destiny. All employees and officials in the public sector had to own a certificate proving their membership of the Aryan race, sometimes tracing their roots back to the 1700s. Now, of course, a document like this isn't handed out anymore since there is no requirement to become a German that's connected to your skin color. But is that really true? If it was, there wouldn't even be a question of why Germania is portrayed by a black woman. Why shouldn't that be the case? You can be black and be as much a German as everyone else. Maybe you even caught yourself asking the question of why a black woman is in this music video. Looking at the pattern of the lyrics, the song starts out with the lead singer saying the first part of a sentence and the choir repeating the first word of what he is about to say next. Here's an example. The lead singer says the word you, with the choir repeating you have directly after. And then the lead singer continuing with the sentence, have cried a lot. We're always led into the next part of his sentence this way. However, shortly before the first chorus, the choir following what the lead singer says don't lead into anything and seemingly just finish his sentence. With that we get the sentences, you can, I know, we are, you all remain. Now, Rammstein's lyrics are meant to be ambiguous, but this part specifically, combined with that choice to cast a black woman as Germania, which is also on the cover of the single, seems to get at the underlying attitude in Germany of what a German is. Namely that the values you hold or how much you might benefit the country only comes secondary to what you look like in determining if you are German or not, at least subconsciously. It's something not really openly said, but I assume a lot of Germans who are also people of color will have encountered this one way or another. That doesn't mean that this attitude is never openly mentioned. For instance, after our last federal election, the speaker...
That's a lot. Like, there's so much we could talk about anything they bring up here, really, if we wanted to. But, like, the only German I am in contact right now is a black German in Germany right now. And I've never asked him how he's been affected from that or anything. But definitely when I think German, I don't think of a black person myself. But I love how this guy's, like, just talking about it so openly. And it's just open thought right now. And, like, because it's ambiguous, so it's up to interpretation. And they don't do many interviews, and that's interesting to know as well, that they, like, kind of stay away and they try not to let people box them.
Absolutely.
Which is so smart. When you have to do that, when you're constantly putting stuff out like this, they gotta tread water lightly.
And I love also what they've done is because we know that they are often accused of being a very right-wing band and having very right-wing music, but now knowing what their quote that they said to the Rolling Stone, punch Nazis, and their quote to the Rolling Stone, and then also, like we discussed, having a black woman playing the personification of Germany in our reaction video, and how, it's like it's moving forward, it's being a German. And I love that is what he's saying with this. It's like, this is how Rammstein is saying, hey, like, being a German should be more about your values than your skin color, even though all of you are still fighting with that internally, where it's because it had to be skin color first and value secondary. But no, it isn't that.
They got indoctrinated by that Aryan race.
They got,
right?
That was such an indoctrination. And so I even respect even more and love even more that Rammstein had decided to cast a black woman to play the personification of Germany and the German people, because
conversations came from it.
Right conversations came from it.
Yeah, big time.
Speaker of Germany's far-right AfD party on a panel during which he vehemently defended his party from accusations of racism, complained that he doesn't see enough Germans in our inner cities. How would he know who is a German citizen and who isn't? I guess I don't have to spell it out for you.
Yeah.
While the Nazis' blood and soil rhetoric is long gone, and Germany on the whole is sensitive to exclusionary language, blind spots like judging someone by their skin color are ever present here as well as in other European countries. And by the way, the German government still accepts the Aria-Nachweis as an official document to prove German nationality, which is kind of messed up.
Wow.
The risk of making the Nazis seem tempting with these earlier mentioned shots is also undercut by casting a person who the Nazis would have intense disdain for. In a different part of the song, we see the band distancing themselves from nationalism in a manner that is pretty cut and dry compared to their other work. Germany, your love, is a curse and a blessing. Germany, my love, I cannot give you. From the right, German anti-nationalism is often framed as a kind of self-hatred due to an underlying guilt left over from the Third Reich. And despite research showing the opposite to be the case, they seemingly cannot fathom someone viewing their country of origin in a nuanced manner and not strictly positive. If we go beyond the basic understanding of a fifth grader though, the position espoused by Rammstein and parts of the German left is obviously much more thought out than Germany is bad. The truth is that nationalism as a political force is only really powerful if there's an enemy to wield it against. Theoretically, nationalism should be inclusive, you know, regardless of skin color, we are all part of the same nation, upholding the same values, etc. But obviously it doesn't work that way in reality. Nationalism goes hand in hand with the exclusion of others, be that an outside force like a colonialist overlord or a subset of the population not deemed to be truly part of the in-group. At the end of the second verse, we get the lyrics, Germany, Germany above everyone, which is a reference to the first verse of the Deutschland lied, which reads, Germany, Germany above all. Now again, in intention, these lyrics are not meant to show superiority over others. It was written back when the German state didn't exist yet, and this line was supposed to express the long-existing desire for a German nation-state. A translation more faithful to its intent would be realizing Germany as an idea is more important than anything else. It doesn't have the same ring to it, unfortunately. Rammstein changing the lyrics to Germany above everyone gets much closer to how the first verse of the Deutschland lied ended up being understood and used. After the takeover of the Nazi regime, they scrapped the second and third verse of the Deutschland lied, which calls for unity, justice and freedom, and only kept the first verse and combined it with the Horst Wessel-Lied, the anthem of the party. If there's anything to take from Germany's long and multifaceted history, it's that right-wing nationalist movements only ever lead their countries into misery and destruction. And of course, any self-espoused nationalist these days will deny this, trying to frame Germany as a historical anomaly, but we can see this trend play out from Italy, Romania, Japan, or in the language used by self-espoused nationalists today. At a certain point in time, nationalism was useful since Germany was a country in which just as much religious divisions as class divisions existed. It's also something to easily overdose on, unfortunately. All that said, if this is supposedly the message of this Rammstein song, why all this controversy? What is it about this scene that caused such an outrage? Well, nothing, to be honest. This scene, as part of the video, is largely uncontroversial in the broader German media landscape, and it makes sense for it to be there, because all the quotes I read to you in the beginning were uttered before the actual release of the song. Shortly before the song came out, the band released a little snippet from the video for promotional purposes showing only the scene from the concentration camp and nothing else. It wasn't clear at this point in time that this scene was part of a broader tour through German history, which is not to say the band is beyond criticism though. Releasing just this part without providing further context was obviously a marketing gimmick, because the band and label behind them knew the reaction and media storm it would cause. And while Rammstein is still a successful band, they hadn't released a studio album in over 10 years, so this was an easy way to get their name out there again. Which is an effective marketing strategy, I guess. But it's also a shitty and, above all, lazy thing to do. The band has always played with nationalist aesthetics because, in large part, it's shock rock, and in Germany that's obviously what you would do. And of course the band is free to do that. This marketing trick specifically just feels very cheap, while not saying anything. I think...
And that's his opinion, where maybe other people thought that was great. As you know, like, we never even got offended by her being black. If you remembered that. So, like, everyone takes things so differently, but this definitely still was taken, even if you didn't take it, like, bad. Like, it still made you think, because they had so much image on this. So it's... They know what they're doing. I can't believe they waited a whole decade before they even got a studio album out.
Yeah, that's insane. And you know what? I just to contradict what he's saying here, because he was saying that just only showing that one scene is lazy. I think on the contrary, because they know that they have been...
That's patience.
That's patience, and it was well thought out, well executed, because they know that they are often viewed as a right-wing band. They have been called Nazis. They've been called all these things. They've had the slander thrown on them.
Yeah.
So if they were worried about having more slander, they would have avoided that scene as a promotional thing by all means.
100%.
But they were playing on that as well. Like he's saying, shock rock, it is that shock value.
Yeah.
To be like, oh my God, like Rammstein's back. It's been 10 years. They have an album.
And what's going on?
What is this? What are they doing? Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
It's going to create that conversation. And they did create that conversation. And when you play on emotions like that at the with people, you're going to get positive and negative and neutral and everything, which is what Rammstein definitely does with all of the videos that we've seen and their songs, is to open up that conversation to get people talking. Because if you don't talk about it and you bury it and you suppress it, you're burning the books, you're burning the stories inside yourself. So what makes it any different to burn a library, burn the books, or suppress what's gone on and not talk about it?
Well, this is some dark times. I can see why some people wanted to suppress it, but let's keep it going here.
I think this is the part of the media analysis in which I should talk about what this piece of media means to me personally, but honestly, something like national identity is never something I thought about much. But it is without a doubt a topic much more complex in Germany than in other countries, considering how recent the Third Reich ended. What I feel like a lot of people miss regarding this discussion is that wondering about what Germany is, what values it should uphold, or even if it should exist at all, are thoughts that are older than the country itself. Germany being involved in a conversation about national identity on the regular might seem like a product of the Second World War and the atrocities committed during it, but honestly, different versions of this conversation are seen all throughout Germany's history. Not only the question of if a united Germany should exist, but also how should it exist? One of the reasons the first revolution on German soil failed was because there was so much disagreement on what this new country should even be. Right. Should it be a monarchy or a republic? Should we have a Kaiser? Should Austria be included or not? Then, a few decades later, the German nation state is formed, but not due to a revolution from below, but by military force, with serious disagreements about if the Kaiser should be a German Kaiser or a Kaiser of Germany. A few years later, the big questions rile up the country again, like should we be a great power or a world power? Should we be part of the West or not? Then after the devastating defeat of the First World War, should we really be a republic, or isn't that something fundamentally un-German? What about all those Germans now living in lost territories? Takeover of the Third Reich, proclaiming that excluding Austria was a mistake and that they are actually Germans. On top of that, Germany's role in the world is and allegedly always has been the one of a Manichaean struggle against the Jewish race. Third Reich is defeated, Germany is split into two, with the western side accusing the east of being nothing but a Soviet satellite state, and the east accusing the west of being the fascist successor of Nazi Germany, and round it goes. As Rammstein's video shows, there are so many different facets to German history that it's impossible to make out a single national character. Being unsure about national identity and Germany's place in the world is and always has been part of this country. One thing that has proven successful in avoiding another catastrophe is being honest with Germany's missteps on the question of what Germany should be and not shying away from the disastrous consequences. As Rammstein does in their video, recalling Germany's past without leaving out the ugly parts is not only necessary for our own sake, but also for Europe, a project we share with others.
Exactly. Thank you so much for saying that.
Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you liked this little adventure into media analysis because there might be more to come. But I'm not so sure about that yet.
You should,
A massive thank you to my patrons, especially because this took so much longer than initially anticipated. We should be able to go back to the regular schedule now, though. Something else I wanted to mention is that I often get the question if I feel like my channel gaining some popularity is an indicator of a shift in the political landscape on YouTube, and it very well might be. I'm actually not sure about that. But what I know is that I and a couple of other creators have the big advantage of a viewer base which spreads their videos far and wide. So the driving force behind this trend is actually just you folks, as far as I'm concerned. I'm always amazed at the places my content ends up being spread to, so from me to you, a sincere thank you for helping me out here. Couldn't do it without you. Also, thank you to Big Joel and H. Dornberger for lending me their voices for this one. Check out their channels via the video description. Links as always down below. Join the Patreon for extra content and other cool stuff. Check out the social media links, etc., etc. And I hope to see you the next time. Until then, have a good one.
Wow. Well done.
Jeez. And there it is, top left.
Yeah, Deutschland.
That, like, I remember that song like changed the channel. It really did. It was one of our first really popular reaction videos that showed what we like to do, which was dissecting and like really finding out about the art behind the music. Obviously music's art, but like the visuals and the story and the history and all that. And this is one of the best songs ever to do it. And this was just so enlightening and also devastating just to see what they went through and how recent that Third Reich is. And I'm so happy that he said that at the very end. It's like, should even Germany exist at all? And I'm sure that thought was always happening, and we're having that thought right now of what should exist and what should we throw away, what should we keep.
Yeah, in North America, we are actually going through a lot of what Germany has already gone through.
Yeah, you should see it.
You should see
Europe itself,
like you said, this project.
Yeah.
But this is a global project, because
No
if you
kidding.
go back to the 14 AD, 16 AD, they were the Germanic tribes that were united and came together, and
Absolutely.
every tribe is going to have slightly different cultural wants and cultural needs and expectations of how that's going to work, because if they were tribes, they were disconnected at the very beginning,
Had to find a common thing
so
eventually.
that it had the common German who was raised by the Romans, who came back to unite the German people, the German tribes. But they've been fighting over the politics of which tribe should rule Germany. That the very basis. That's what I'm kind of reading out from this, from a 30-minute video on history,
which is so well done.
So well done. And so when these tribes were then united to become the United Germany, to become Germany and as an idea, even, they still can't decide 2,000 years later. And that is what has left to this unease that we've been seeing. But that unease isn't just with the Germanic people. That unease is with all of us, because we were the Celtic tribes. We were the I don't know what the full name, Slavic tribes, the German tribes. Every people started as a tribe that came together to create a nation.
And it was the idea and their ideologies that ruled them forward.
Exactly. And those ideas and ideologies are constantly in flux.
Yeah.
And it's who's writing the books, who's writing the propaganda, who's writing these ideas.
Kidding.
That's really controlling where
Nazi
the wave
and all that.
Exactly. Where the wave shifts. And so now in North America, we're seeing a lot of these historical things that have been happened in the past that also have been suppressed in history. Like, we didn't learn anything about like why this happened. We only learned about the 40s. That was it.
Yeah, it's so important to know what happened in the 20s and before that too.
And so now, even while watching this video, I'm sure you guys saw my face just like in a scowl as I was taking this in, because it really resonated with a lot of what is happening now. Like you said, we just stormed, well, not we, we're Canadian. The Americans just stormed the Capitol. They've been...
Which was a politically
driven thing.
Yeah.
Now they're having, there's a lot of, in media that's happening both in Canada and in the States, is now even in commercials and things that should just be about chocolate or just be about, friendship or love or whatever it is, that should be fun. It should be bringing people together in freedom and unity. It's now being politically driven, and you're seeing all these things that are happening here that I really connected with, like, oh shit, that's happening now for us.
No kidding. Yeah, it's real.
This video, this is real.
Yeah.
And because of the suppression, history will repeat itself if we can't have these open conversations. So I'm super thankful for bands like Rammstein that open up these triggering moments and open up these controversial places to build needed conversations.
Yeah, and you can't shy away from what's happened. And I can't believe it's just that was the one thing that was what got them in trouble. But that's just the way the world works. We really appreciate it. We love their art. We love everything that they do. And Matt, thank you so much for bringing us this video. It wasn't too late. Listening to it now is totally fine. It actually makes us want to go check out the song again. And I just still can't believe they had a decade gap between an album. That just must have been insane when it came out, like after that long wait.
No wonder, because like
That would have just shook
That would
everything,
have shook
right?
everything.
Yeah.
10 years and to come out with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And for that to be the opening
That's
commercial
powerful.
for it. And
Yeah.
you're like still waiting for the song and the video to release. And then the song releases before the video even comes out.
Yeah, yeah.
So like they threw it for such a loop to forcibly build anticipation.
Yeah.
To then have these explosive
Sure did.
conversations.
Yeah, we're
Because
still
without
talking.
that anticipation, you wouldn't have that explosive conversation.
Yeah.
So I think it was actually perfect that we waited 13 months between the video and the analysis. And thank you so much, Three Arrows, for this amazing analysis. You did such a phenomenal job. I can't wait to see what else you are doing with your channel. I'm definitely going to take a look.
Well, thank you so much, Matt and Chronicans. If you had a good time, definitely hit that like button, subscribe if you want to be a part of the Enter the Chronic family. But we are now exiting the rabbit hole, folks. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks so much, Matt. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Peace and love.
God bless y'all.
Take care, and bye for now.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Enter the Chronicness.
Thank you so much for making it all the way to the very end of the video. And if you have not yet done this, here's an easy way to subscribe to our channel. And if you want to subscribe to the artist that you just heard, here's an easy way to do that as well.
And if you are also interested in finding a video that you might like, just click here. Thank you so much for coming to the channel. Peace and love, everyone.
God bless y'all.
Take care. Bye for now.